in some ways we're all boxers,
If I was to say that it was not like a rock bottom situation, but it was definitely a life-changing time in my life as a teen, as an adolescent, as responsibility. I already had one chance and I stuffed it.
Berto Goodman, welcome
Yes.
to the greatest comeback.
Thank you, Luke.
Dude, I've been looking forward to this conversation a lot for two reasons. One, the first is that I think you've got a really great story. And the second reason is we share a common interest in boxing.
Absolutely.
And if I think about part of the, as I was coming up with the idea for the podcast, I was really connected with this idea of sharing people's comeback stories.
Yep.
And the theme of boxing is a real, it's like an allegory for life.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
No,
Because,
absolutely.
in boxing, as in life, you're going to get tested. Life's going to come at you like a fighter's going to come at you.
Yep.
You're going to get knocked down. You're going to have to get up. How do you respond? And I think, in some ways we're all boxers,
Yeah.
we might not be fighting our fights in a ring, but all of us are fighting some sort of fight.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot of healing and learning from sharing our stories of how we got up off the canvas.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thanks for being willing to share your story and talk about your journey with boxing. Let's start from the beginning. Mate, how does a Filipino kid with an Italian first name end up in the Southern Islands?
By luck, I'd say. I was basically adopted at 3 months old, and I was adopted by an Italian Brazilian mum and a Hungarian Australian father.
Wow.
It wasn't an intention to want to get adopted. It was basically my biological mum had to give me up to the church. Back in the day, it was one of those things that, that was the only place to sort of take him because we were all poor. My dad had a friend and a contact that was in the Philippines, in Manila, and he had looked after all these kids because the church couldn't look after all the kids.
Yeah.
And then I was living in his house with a whole lot of nurses and everything, and people that were looking after the kids.
How old were you at this point?
3 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And my dad came over, and basically, who's my dad now, he basically came over with my mum too, and they just came around and they had a look around, and they were shown by their friends exactly what they're doing with the kids. And I was basically crying at the time as a little baby, and I was given to my father now, and I stopped crying, and that was a sign for Dad to adopt me, basically. That was what he said to me.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a blurry kind of like story, but that's the gist of basically what happened. And, there was a few loopholes where to get me adopted to get here was hard, but we got there in the end. And anyway, we moved over, and I don't know how I came about coming from the Philippines and straight to a very kind of small country town.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I mean, that's the thing that grabbed me when I met you. Is like, wow, okay, this person's story is a little different to most stories.
Yeah.
What do you recall? I mean, I'm sure you don't remember anything about the Philippines.
No, I know little snippets of when I was little, like very little, between like kind of, I'd say 1 year old till 3 years old, where I understood little parts of where I was. We did go back to the Philippines, but nothing really. Yeah, I don't know very much about anything else, but just the smells and little things like that. And then we actually moved over to Brazil, where my younger sister was born, and I do know that vividly, more so than I did when I was actually a baby, basically.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting and hectic, probably for the first 4 years of my life.
Yeah.
that I didn't know, but when Dad told me the story, I was quite interested about it. And to this day, there's still, Dad will tell me some stories that I'll hear, or little things that we have little chats about that I go, oh, well, I can't remember actually hearing that, but it was new to me, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
My life is still I'm still working that out.
Yeah. I remember my folks split when I was a baby. And so I grew up in a single parent household, and I was an only child, right? So
sure.
And I remember being a kid, and it was kind of a gradual thing for me, I think, but just this, slow, gradual awareness that my circumstances, I mean, back then, the divorce rate wasn't as high as it is today.
No, absolutely not.
So I remember there being this point in my life when I started to think, oh, okay, my circumstances are a little different. Was there a point for you as a kid when you looked around and thought, shit, no one looks like me?
I'm different kind of, yeah.
Do you have a recollection of there being a moment for you, or was it more of just a gradual understanding that, my situation is very different to my mates?
To be honest, like, my father and my mum now, like they're very transparent with me, so honest, I knew there was something there, but it was more when I was more hitting my early teens and the meaning of, family and whatever it is. But I in my heart, I knew that I thought they're my biological parents.
Yeah.
And they are. That's how I see it. I mean, the saying, like, the person that grows you is your family. The people that are there by you, your side, are your family. And they have been ever since. So yeah, I never really didn't think that I was not a part of them. And as mentioned before, like I think it was more when I hit my teens and certain things in my life started to evolve, and that's when I became a little bit more distant and a little bit more testing as a teenager.
So obviously, your family loves you and embraces you, and
absolutely
you're part of the family, and
and
that's beautiful. But what about your community? Do you feel the same sense of acceptance and being embraced? I mean, I would imagine the Southern Highlands, 35 years ago is probably, not what it is today.
Yeah. Look, to be honest, I mean, the years that I've been here, I've been here up until I was about 20, 21, and I moved up to the city, just like any other local kid, growing up in the Highlands. They want to go to the big smoke. They want to go somewhere exciting for them, either that or they're at uni or studying or whatever it is. I was that percentile that I was like, no, I want to get out of here. I mean, when I was young, definitely growing up, there was racism, but it wasn't shone like for me so much because all my mates were all white Anglo. We're all, they're all come from great families, come from farmer or good labor families and good working families, and you see that today. Like, there's a lot of Aussie families here, and that was like that's how I grew up. I grew up with all that type of society. I never grew up in a city where there was multicultural things happening everywhere. There wasn't Filipinos there wasn't groups of other races around here. There was literally just me and a couple of other people that we kind of knew each other, but we didn't. Yeah. I felt that. I definitely felt that even when I was a teenager, going to parties sometimes. There were times where, you go to the street and you see some, older people that kind of see you a little bit differently and sort of awkwardly knowing that you're hanging out with some, your mates that are not your color or your race or whatever it is. but I never felt at all not a part of it. I knew it was there, but I never felt I'm a part of it because I grew up that way.
Yeah.
You know.
Your parents split when you're 14.
Yeah.
Your mum passes away when you're 18.
Yeah, 18, 19, yeah.
18, 19. I know you've got nothing to compare this to, but I imagine that that's as traumatic as losing a biological parent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like, you know, being a teenager, I mean, like, to be honest, I can't actually remember when mum and dad split. It was between that 12 and 14 year mark, respectfully. Yeah. But it was definitely, it was hard. It was hard because I think going into being a teenager, like I started to find my identity as a teenager, my identity as a young adolescent. I started finding out that yes, I started to understand what adoption was. When you're younger, you got kids. You know, it's one of those things where you, your hormones start to like change. You start to have different things. You have different moods and whatever. And I was definitely I was definitely shaken by that. And that led me to a lot of whirlwind stupidity back in the day, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was very uncontrollable. And it made me sad about that. You know, when I look back at it. I mean, back in the day, I didn't really think it that way.
Yeah.
Because I was in it.
Yeah.
But truthfully, and like any teenager, there's going to be a wrong and there's going to be a right. But I think that collateral of everything that happening all at once within that space of time, it was just,
100%. I was thinking about the conversation we had yesterday, and I was thinking about you last night. And in preparation for this conversation, I thought to myself, an adolescent kid growing up the way you grew up, feeling a sense of, I'm accepted by my mates, but there's still something that's still different about me. I've got all the challenges and problems that any other teenager's got.
Absolutely.
But then on top of that, I'm going through the emotional roller coaster of seeing parents separate, and then someone that I care very deeply about at 18 or 19 passes away. That is a perfect cocktail for trouble.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when trouble came, what did it look like?
Yeah. Look, to be honest, like, obviously realizing all that stuff, I became, it could have gone two ways. Yeah. I come from a fantastic family, a beautiful family, very loving family. But yeah, there was, when I was a teenager, you seek attention, you seek thrill, you just want, you're always pushing the limits somewhat, possibly just me, I don't know, but that's how I was. And you do stupid stuff. I used to, in honest truth, I used to break into houses just for a thrill. I used to, forgive me, Dad, if I had to say this, but he knows I've stolen off Dad. I've drank. I did party drugs. I did all that stuff when I was younger, and I'm ashamed of it now, but I know I did it, and you can't get turn back time. And I was very sad about it, and it was just a spiral of different little things. I don't know if I was trying to try and get attention from my dad, or I was trying to. It was just really bad. It was like there was so much confusion in myself. I thought back in the day it was such a cool thing to do, just like any other teenager. But then also when Mum passed away, you know, I met my wife just after, pretty much a year after she passed away. I met basically the woman of my dreams, and that hit home. You know, still to this day, it's a hard thing to have. You know, like a hard thing to lose someone, especially someone that, you know, cares for you so much. And yeah, I found that very hard for me to. Sorry, I found that very hard for me to concentrate and try and figure out what's going on, because two people that were so influential in my life, you know, it all happened all in the worst time, being a teenager, you know, testing the limits, also having the best time probably as a teenager of my life. But then losing someone that loved me so much for accepting me who I was, and a father that accepted me for who I was, and gave me a second chance.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting hearing you talking about that, because I think there's a lot of shit that I've done that I'm ashamed of.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Lots of stuff. And I think one of the things that I've, you know, as I'm 53 years old now, like, you know, one of the things I'm starting to understand is, you know, rather than ignore that and sort of keep a blanket over it, I think it's better for our souls if we actually talk about that stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've got this memory of, I don't know how old I was. I might have been 10 or 11 or 12, and I was with a kid, and we were in a building site, and it was a house that was being built, and the timber frame was up, and the plasterers had started putting in the plaster walls, and it was a Sunday, or it was the school holidays, and we were bored, and so we wandered into this building site, and we just picked up rocks, and we started throwing rocks through the plasterboard that had put up. As an adult now, I think to myself, Jesus, you know, that there were people that were probably working hard to pay for that house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't, you know, there's an expression, you know, we're all operating from the realm of our own awareness.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, as much as some of those things, when you think back on them and remember them, they might make you cringe. But what I do when I have those cringy moments, I go, oh, that was little Luke. He didn't know any better. He was just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's really helped me.
Yeah.
Rather than just say you were a piece of shit and you didn't deserve anything.
No,
you know what I mean?
That's right.
I was just a little kid trying to figure shit out.
Yeah,
and so were you.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And that's really helped me. All of that sort of comes to a head when your dad gives you a letter. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess, you know, when Mum passed away, I ended up doing all the stuff that I did, and it was a stupid thing that I did. And I actually moved out of the house. I moved out of living with him. And I ended up moving in with my wife's now, my girlfriend back at the time, at her parents' place. And from there, I just ended up, I basically didn't really speak to Dad for about a year, if not more. But there was a couple of things that happened that pretty much hit rock bottom for Dad with me. Like, he was pissed off. You could tell he was pissed off. When I look back at it, but at the time I didn't. I was still grieving Mum. That was only fresh still after a year or two. So I was going on an emotional roller coaster, physically and mentally.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was doing stupid stuff myself. And then it got to a point where I got a letter from Dad. I can't actually recollect exactly how it happened, but I think Dad had left it at the house, at my girlfriend's house at the time. And I remember I was like, oh, this letter is from Dad. I sensed it. And I said, I have to go sit in the car. So I went and sat in the car. I knew it was bad. It was really bad. Like I was like, oh no, here we go. So I opened it up. And the first the first sentence, or if not the first paragraph, I looked at it and I just broke down in tears. I think it was, I don't know why, but I think it was also because it was a build up. I hadn't spoken to him for a year. I hadn't spoken to him properly. He knew that there was certain things that he wanted to say to me. There were certain things I wanted to say to him. Anyway, I broke down and I knew straight away, like, this is not a good thing. And basically in the letter it said, in the gist of it, you know, it was the opening sentence was pretty much, you know, son, I really love you. Or I love you. Yeah. And it was a very sincere kind of paragraph. And I was like, that really pierced through my chest. And I was like, oh, you know, when you got someone that's close to you or someone that cares for you, and they say something like that to you, it pierces you. Like
someone you respect too.
Yeah, and respect, exactly. Yeah. I ended up just going, look, you know, I looked at the letter, continued to read it, and then I realized it just said a couple of paragraphs like, words, you know, if you keep going the track that you're going, you probably go to jail. If you don't go to jail, you'll be going somewhere that it's not what we want. Yeah, that's pretty much from that time that I saw that letter, I changed. I said, I have to do something about myself. I was like, shit, I literally need to turn my life around. It wasn't going to be that time right there, but it definitely was a moment in my life that I was like, either I have to pull my shit together and go, look, let's go, or I just keep doing the way I am and I'll figure it out and know what the track is not to go south, you know. So yeah, I from that day forth, it was a very long road to trying to build myself back up.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that would be, if I was to say that it was not like a rock bottom situation, but it was definitely a life-changing time in my life as a teen, as an adolescent, as responsibility, and for people that you just fully cared for me. It gave me that, it's like a warning basically, you know, and that would have been my second chance. You know, I already had one chance and I stuffed it, you know, and if I have that I would say that would have been my second chance. Not many people get second chances. Yeah. You know.
Did boxing come along at the right time for you?
I think so. It all happened within the last, from that letter, it all happened probably within 2 and a bit years after that. That went and moved very quickly after that.
How did you find boxing?
I was around it. Never competed. I was just around it. I liked it. Loved watching it. And then when I moved to Sydney, I was like, I need to go to a gym. And I started at PCYC. I really liked the vibe of it. Loved how it was grungy. You know, like it had, you know, old posters around the wall.
Dirty, smelly.
Yeah, loved it. Nothing better. But it also, when you look around, you had a sense of like there's got to be something here that like made you feel like there's a worth here. You know, like you feel like there's all these posters. There's like, it feels like they've got like old gloves there. They have all these things. And it made me go like, why do you still have old gloves there? Why do you have like signed, like, you know, sweaty kind of like shorts or whatever it is, and you just go, what is it? But it's like, I wonder why. And then I just get training, and I love training. Like I used to go every like 2 times a week there, you know. I was yeah, and then I started seeing like some of the elite amateurs there that were training, and I saw a couple of the pros there that were training, and it was just so cool to watch them spar. I was like, man, this is mad. But I just kept training, and I was training with a mate of mine, a couple of my mates, and we got told, all right, we're going to class, and then next minute, a couple of weeks later, the coach goes, hey, Berto, and our other mates, it's your turn to spar. We looked at each other, going, are you kidding me? Anyway, jumped in, didn't know what we were doing, absolutely got beat. Like it was a proper beat down. I remember the first time I got beat down, I was like literally in the lounge, just like, what just happened, you know? And that really defined me. Like, do I want to do this or do I want to not do this? And I was like, you know, I'll have a crack at it.
Yeah.
You know, and
big difference between hitting a bag and getting
absolutely
in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I just kept training, and in the interim, when I was starting out there, I was also doing my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness same time. So I was doing, you know, I had a bit of background in fitness myself, but nothing in boxing. And I was just like, this is cool, actually. I really want to do this. I continued training, and then I was sparring too. And then eventually I stopped at the PCYC. I ended up getting a job in the city at a gym, and I started running the classes there. And then he said, look, the boss that was there said, you know, do you want to run the classes pretty much full time? I was like, yep, sweet. And that was boxing. And then I started learning on the spot, basically for myself, exactly how to do what we would do, like to box, basically, that just the foundations of boxing and fitness. I used my fitness and like just the foundations of boxing to help others. And I'm a people's person. I love talking to people. And it ended up just growing, and I loved it. You know, ever since then, it just took off. And then about a year later, I ended up getting all these other guys coming in, and we did this thing. They were at the gym, they were doing these things. It's like a white collar boxing thing, like a 12-week challenge. And, you know, I actually took in one of those. Okay. And I thought it was great.
Yeah.
But, you know, I ended up just wanting to keep doing the coaching. And then I found...
So that was your first fight?
No. I've done a couple of other fights before that, but it was more, I had exhibition fights, and then I did my first fight on there. But it was interesting because it was just, if you ask anyone, it's one of those things where you go, it's what you get treated as a pro. You don't get treated like that as an amateur.
Yeah.
You get treated like a pro, like the whole kit and caboodle. You get everything. You get pampered basically for 12 weeks. But it doesn't really give you a really big insight of exactly how a fighter actually trains and how a fighter endures training. You know, endures life in training, life as a fighter.
Give me a picture of that. Like, you know, the lead up to a fight, the preparation, the training, the diet, I mean, there's probably a lot there, but just skim the tops of the waves for me. What does fight preparation look like?
It's hard. I think the start of a fight camp, or the start of a prep of camp of boxing is mental. You want to have it. You want to do it. You know, you have to be hungry for it. But not a lot of people also don't realize that you also have to have that open mind to know that whatever outcome it is, I need to get in there. I feel like the boxing at the moment, back in the day, even when I started, is a very like winning mentality. With boxing, it's a 50 lose, 50 win. It's a 50-50 chance. And if it's a draw, like everyone's pissed off.
Yeah.
Because both camps and both fighters have endured so much training and endured so much prep to get to that stage.
You want a result.
When you have no result, it can be, and I fully concur with whatever camp it is. But in terms of the actual fight training, 100%. There's a lot involved. I mean, the start of the training is all about mental, and then the mid and all the way through, it's physical. It's all about fitness. It's all about being focused. It's all about staying resilient, being consistent. It's not a sport where it is a sport that you can make it like for anyone. But if you really want to really push your limits, there is that side to it. But if you just want to be that person, just to have that little bit of a taste of what it's all about, you can do that. That's why we have, that's why there are classes these days, not just in my club, but in other clubs, that they have got a small, taste of exactly what it's like. But when you go into like a fighters, like all clubs have their own little kind of name for it, like fighters club, academy, team, whatever it is. But when you're in that class, your mentality changes, because it has to change. Because everyone is in there for one reason, and that reason is to focus and really have that chance of like, right, I'm a fighter now. How do I have to become a fighter? There's not like just two people in the room that are like, hey, I'm a joker, and then there's 8, 9 people that are in a room that are, I'm focused, I want to be a fighter. Like the two guys that are a small minority will lean to what everyone else is doing, because it's the mood. Like everyone's focused. And if it's not, they will know themselves soon. Not in a bad way, but they'll know through their journey of boxing, right, I was joking around too much, and that was a thing that I needed to, put back in the gear to realise that I'm fighting,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been in the ring, but I've been in a few street fights. And what I remember about those experiences is before every single one of them, I was terrified.
Sure.
The build up, the shouting, the pushing, the name calling, the whatever it was that was a terrifying experience. But when the first punch gets thrown, there was no fear. It was just, you're in it, and you don't have time to get scared. Would you say that's similar to having a proper boxing fight? You're scared beforehand, and once you're in it, it's fine, or is it a different experience?
I agree. And this is not being sexist. This is general. Like, this is a fact. Like, alpha males, like, if you're an alpha male, right? And not, I'm sure that there is that side before, that not just an alpha male. It could be a woman. It could be anyone. But what I'm saying is, if you get pushed to the limits and you get pushed over the line, you'll know, whether or not, like, survival or not. Like, and I mean, like Mike Tyson, like he says that everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. It's true. I mean, you have so many people who hear that and they go, oh, it's just a cliche kind of like thing. It's so true, but you get someone that comes into the gym and they all come in with this big bravado, like this big, like, oh man, I'm like, I know what I'm doing. How many fights have you had? They always ask the question, how many fights have you had? Or if they don't say that, they're sussing it out. Yeah. It's true. And eventually when it becomes them, you know the demeanor changes straight away. Because as soon as you say, righto, it's time for you to spar, and they go, sweet, let's do it. But they get a beat down, or they know that they've got nothing to answer for. I'll say to them, are you coming back to training? They'll come up with mad excuses.
Yeah.
And that's not being disrespectful. I've heard it so many times, because that's what that's my job, is to be a coach, to see that from them, to see what they have. I'm not just a coach in the sense that it's physical and say, turn up guys, we're going to grab the jump rope, we're going to get on the bag, and that's it. No, my job is also to make sure that, like, mentally you're ready to go. And if you're not ready to go, you'll find out soon enough that I'll go, right, you need to keep working, and show me that you're ready to go. Yeah. Not just for myself, but more so that you show me, because then I know that you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Just like any other like club, they'll be they're about that, because it's all about representing themselves, more so the fighter that needs to be representing themselves, but they're representing the club. So you don't want to be sitting there going, like, as a coach, I've got to have the responsibility of my fighter. So if I think, yeah, he's got a really, really confident, like, demeanor, great, but when he gets into the ring, it's a totally different story. And I go, are you still confident? Are you feeling good? I don't want that in front of everyone. I want them to know that he's physically and mentally ready to go. You know, and that's my job, is safety is paramount to me. I want to make sure that at the end of the bout, I can go, great, that was awesome, you can go. If I have to throw the towel in for some odd reason, which I've done in the past many times before, is because either they're not fighting back, or I've told them, like, you need to fight back. If you're not fighting back, you got to, or show me something, I'm going to throw it in. And there's two things. At the end of that fight, you'll get them, hey, coach, what was all that about? Or they'll say, thanks, coach. When they say it's what was all that about, I'll go, it could have gone within 2 seconds after that. If I didn't throw that towel, it could have gone pear-shaped. I'd much rather know that you can be pissed off at me at the start, now, and thank me later. Because I'd much rather send you home to your family or your loved ones and know that you can fight another day. It's not about that. That's the thing about the fight game, that it's totally different, in the sense that you can be a fighter, become that fighter, but until you really want to push that limit, you know, you got to show me that mentally. You know, you got to show that, not just to myself, but yourself too. You know, what they call it, you got to push that line. Like, you got to get past that line to be able to do it.
Yeah. You mentioned that great line that Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
I always hear that, and I just kind of, I swap out punched in the face for, life, because everyone's going to get punched in the face. It might not be a fist. It might be, you fall into ill health, or you lose someone that you care about, or you lose a business, you lose a relationship, you get divorced. There's a punch waiting for you.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's really about how do I take that, and what do I do next? So I love that that line. What was it like having Johnny Lewis in your corner? The great.
It was fantastic. Yeah, like, to be honest, I was, the last 1 or 2 fights I had was with him. He was unreal. He's still a great friend of mine. We still keep in touch. He always calls me little brother.
Yeah.
I like to call him, he's like my second father, but he would never say that. He would just be like, little brother.
Yeah.
But that's to all of the people that he's touched, everyone that he's trained. He's like literally like a god of boxing. He literally just makes you feel so humble. He is a humble person. He's got one thing about Johnny Lewis is he's not a technical coach. He's just he just knows when to say the right things at the right time.
Yeah.
And yes, he's got the the technical advice, because he's the best of the best in Australia. He's a walking legend. But the one thing that everyone that knows him, he says things to you that just resonate and things that make you just go, understand, you know. I'll call him up, you know, once a month, or, you know, once every 2 months or whatever it is, and just call him up, see how he's going. You know, he's getting older, but, you know, whenever I call him up, I feel a sense of like, just like, I'm so glad that I get to call him up, and I'm so glad that I can actually talk to him. Because even if I get a missed call if it goes straight to voicemail, he'll make the effort to call it back, and he knows so many people. He knows so many people in Australia. Yeah, he's not just done mentoring and training for boxers, but mentoring and training for a lot of football clubs, and not just football clubs, for athletes, for everyone. For him to actually still feel, you know, like super close with me shows his character. And I love that about him. Yeah. And one thing that I learned from him was, you know, there was a couple of things before I even started. When I was at the Sydney club, I wanted to enroll into the federal police, and I didn't get past that first stage, all good. But I was so proud. I said, you know, I told Johnny Lewis, you know, I want to work in child protection. I want to work and help protect kids and whatever it is, because, you know, I love something about being in the youth and because I was a troubled kid myself, but I get along with, you know, when I was younger and now I get along with the youth, and I feel like there's a similarity there. So I don't know if that's just my background, that I felt like I have this sort of like responsibility in a way, and that's why I was like, you know, I'm gonna join the feds. And Johnny turned to me and goes, "No, mate, no, that's gonna cheer you up." And basically, I didn't do it. And he says, "You're a fighter." And then that was after I did that, started doing the fighting, and then he said to me, "No, actually, you're a coach."
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
He said to me, "Look, mate, you're not a fighter, you're a coach."
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between a fighter and a person who's a coach, because I don't have malice in me. I'm not a malice person. I'm not a person that goes out there and like actually goes in. Like the last couple of fights, I went up to my opponents after and before the fight, said, "Let's have a great fight." Before the fight, no one does that.
Yeah.
No one goes up to the fight and go, touch glove and goes, "Thanks, bro. Let's get out safe." Blah blah. They want to rip your head off. That they're like, "Good, this is great, this is the build up, but you're in my way of getting the W." Yeah. You don't know what they're going through. You don't know what they've endured to get to that point, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Hey, let's have fun out there." Yeah. And then that's when Johnny knew straight. No, you're a coach, and I was mentored by him. Yeah. That's how I became who I am. Yeah. You know, I became a coach. Yeah. That's beautiful. Yeah.
I think great coaches, I think among all the other skills they've got, I think they've got the ability to read people, to understand people on a deep level. And obviously Johnny saw something in you that made him think, no, this guy's best served by helping others, serving others. Do you think it was the vulnerability that he saw in you, and the that desire to sort of break bread with your opponent before and after the fight that made him say that? Because I mean, I think when you tell me that Johnny told you to become a coach and stop being a fighter, like two things come to my mind. I think, fuck, the balls in that guy. The balls in that guy to, because as a young man, I imagine you want to be a fighter.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to be told that you need to be a coach.
No, absolutely.
When's my next fight? Don't tell me about it. Let's not talk about coaching. I'm in my freaking 20s or whatever you are. I've got plenty more fights left. This guy says no.
No. Yeah,
No,
exactly. Yeah.
no, this is not you. You know, like, so first of all, Johnny, mad props
Yeah.
for having the
Balls to say that.
say that to a young man. And then the second thought that comes to my mind is, what do you think when you hear that?
Yeah. At first I wasn't taken back because I started, you know, before I even met the guy, like before I met Johnny, like I never knew the magnitude of exactly how big he is.
Yeah.
And the effect and the work and everything that he has done in boxing and in Australia. I thought he was just such a nice, like, wise man. Like, I was legit was like, this guy knows his stuff, you know. And then I realized, wait a second, he didn't say Costa Zoo or Jeff Fennick. And as soon as he said that, I was like, my eyes just lit up. And I was like, okay, cool. And we just became good friends. And then that's where, like, for him, and then I entrusted him. Basically, going back to it, like, I think also what made it clear to me was because, yeah, after those couple of last fights, I knew I didn't personally, he didn't know that, but like, I didn't personally want to continue on. I just don't like the prep of a fight week. I get nervous about it. Even though I'm a coach now and I've got a lot of fighters myself and I know what they've gone through. But I think for me, that was not the person that I was. I was the person to be able to hold their hand and guide them to that stage.
Yeah.
And that's why Johnny was like, no, that's why you need to be that person. You need to be the coach. He didn't say too much. He's a man of few words when he says it. He just says, no, you're a coach. But those answers, like, it made me just go, oh, I've got to do it.
Yeah.
And then, like, just years of experience and, you know, years of going down a track and then doing all those little coaching skills and learning from fighters, learning from clients, learning from myself, learning from other coaches. It made me realize, okay, yeah, I got you. I know what you mean, Johnny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So there's a lot of trust involved there.
Lots.
And obviously, when someone like Johnny Lewis gives you his opinion, you probably want to listen to that. Was that an immediate yes, or was that something that you had to kind of find your way through in the early days of coaching?
At the time that I was there, I definitely said, sure. When he told me, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I was a little bit kind of like, right, I just finished the fight. You know, it was a week after. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. Took me a couple of days and I realized, no, let's do it. And, you know, I basically, you know, pretty much coached alongside him and a few other great people, like Mark Pitts is another guy, Anya Stridesman, like a whole lot of them. Thomas Vassar guy, yeah, a lot of the guys that are there that I was taken under their wings, and they're all in the fight game. You know, and that made me really like, oh man, I'm like, this is mad. Like, I'm part of this like awesome group. You know, I've learned a lot from these guys. Then I started feeling like I belong on this journey to keep going.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I haven't turned back. You know, it's not just that; it's because it's a way of life for me. You know, boxing is not just all about fighting. And as you said before, you know, like, there's so many analogies to it, but like for me, it's like, you know, it's like you're in a ring. Yeah. Your life is, I say it this way to some of my fighters and say it to some people that I know, that Anyway, I basically say, life is a little bit like a bout. You're in a ring, which is your life. You're going to get knocked down a few times, or you're going to get hit a few times, but you're also going to defend, and you're going to attack, and that attack is your opportunity to go, and your defense is to wait and look and whatever it is. In life, I always say, look, guys, you're going to get hit by so many different things, bro. So defend yourself.
Yeah.
But also accumulate information off that. Accumulate knowing, what did I do wrong there? Or what are they doing wrong there that I can make better? And that's your opportunity to attack.
Yeah.
Same with little things like, the time. Like there's every bout in an amateur, or in amateurs is 2-minute rounds. Novice amateurs is 2 rounds, and then you got the pros in 3-minute rounds. If you just be strategic about it, you could be going, look, the first 30 seconds is all about testing, figuring out what you're going to do, not just in your training, but also in life, Then on that second 30 seconds of the round, which is a minute to go, you start analyzing, and you start actually accumulating all that information and start putting it to action, and I always use those little things for training for my fighters, but also do that for, people that are finding it tough in life. I don't use that same analogy, but I say to them, look, guys, you're going to get hit. Or I'll say it to younger kids, younger kids that are really super keen about fighting, but they're just a little bit trouble. When I remember when I was like that age, and I tell them, you got to think of it that kind of like that, like it's okay to feel what you're feeling. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to go backwards. And learn from those and keep going, because you're only going to get better. But with boxing, it doesn't stop. Even if you stop and you go, that's it, I'm done with it, you can still keep moving. You can do other things. I mean, I'd like to say I could retire from that, but I'm passionate about my boxing. I want to keep going.
Yeah.
Not for fighting. I've retired from fighting for sure, but I want to keep coaching, and I want to keep mentoring younger generations, and also people that want to learn boxing.
Yeah. I think I told you I recently got back from a retreat in South America.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wisdom in these things. If you've got your ears open and your eyes open, there's a lot of wisdom to be accumulated. And there was a session that I was a part of at this retreat, and the conversation, or the topic of the conversation, was on purpose. How to find your purpose. And the opening gamut from this beautiful lady that sort of is the general manager of the retreat. She's been there for a long time. Debbie Ricketts. She's an amazing teacher and healer, and just someone that I really look up to and respect. I kind of bowl into this session thinking this is, I'm sort of 53. I'm, at this point in my life where I'm, do I turn left? Do I turn right? Do I go straight ahead? I don't, So that question is really on my mind. And she basically opens up by saying, everyone spends so much time. Every time I do this session, the first thing is, the first thing that people are thinking about is, what am I going to do with my life? And she said, that's the wrong question to ask. The right question that we should be asking ourselves is, who do we want to be? And it strikes me that boxing is a great way to figure out who you want to be. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Boxing, it keeps you honest. Talking about boxing, because it is, like for me, my life is boxing. It's You know, it really does. You know, you do something, you know, if I was to say, like, from a boxing term, when you're in the gym, you know, and you're sparring, you can be overconfident and go in there, but then you might think you've got it, but there's always going to be a chance that someone else is going to humble you. But how do you define yourself there? You know, how do you define yourself once that moment comes? And that's one thing I love about boxing, because it keeps you honest. Like, you can train all you want, you can do it all you want, but eventually you're going to go up against a person that's going to challenge you, or there's going to be something that's going to challenge you in training. Same with life.
Yeah.
And that's for me too. You know, like, my life is I'm still challenged. Like, it's a challenge for me. You know, I've got kids, I've got a beautiful wife. You know, I'm struggling through a lot of things, you know, at the moment. Like, not many people know that I'm struggling through a lot of things. You know, I actually came back from a session with a psychology, with a GP, to get a session with a psychologist, sorry. And I was very blown away about the test that I did and how much it was. I was in the severe side of anxiety, severe side of stress. But when I look back at it, it makes sense. You know, like, I'm working ridiculous hours, but I'm also juggling being a parent, juggling trying to be a husband. You know, so many things are happening, you know. But that's part of, like, my boxing life. You know, like, boxing is boxing, and I have to test myself. Not just, you know, it's not, I don't have to, but it's a test. And you got to roll with the punches, man.
Yeah.
You got to roll with them.
Big time.
I'm still trying to find that, you know, I'm still trying to find that. And not many people know that. Like, I'm like a very happy person. I'm a encouraging person. I try and be as honest as I can to you guys to do it in the club, you know, like, to really push the limits of your training or whatever it is, and to have a good session and whatever it is, and just feel good and have a really good, you know, positive vibe when you walk out. Just as much as I want that.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that all day. But when I get home, I'm buggered. You know, but at the same time, I'm you know, it's my reasoning. I love being there. I love doing this for them, and I love doing it because my self-satisfaction is to see, you know, if I can help others get to that potential and push the limits of their own selves mentally and physically, and then realize, oh, you know, there's a small appreciation that they actually approved and whatever it is. That's massive for me.
Yeah. How much of the fight game do you think is mental?
A lot. You and me both know that. You know, but for people that don't know the fight game too much, I mean, respectfully, it's what they see is one thing, a physical side. They see two aggressive people or two fighters that are going against each other. But for me, it's all about, you know, 80% almost. Well, if we had to say percentages, it would be almost 80% would be mental and 20% would be fitness.
Can you train mental?
You have to be in a good frame of mind, 100%.
But can you train the mental aspect of the sport?
Yes.
Like, you can train your body, you can train technique, you can train a lot of things, but I guess I do find myself wondering, is that propensity to be uncomfortable, is that something you're born with, or is that something that you can acquire, do you think?
Two things. And a lot of trainers will say this too. You have a person that comes in, they have that grit. Yeah. You know that they're a fighter. You just know that these guys are fighters. They're born to fight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's their mental game is next level. But it was like a reason why they've come in. Like, I want to fight. I don't care about win, lose or draw. I'm in there. But then there's the others, never fought before, don't know anything about it. You can make them a fighter. It's a hard road, but
yeah,
a lot of people say that you can't train a person that doesn't have that grit or whatever it is. You can. But the only problem is you as a trainer or a person that wants to make them, you have to have the patience to do it. You know, just as much as the fighter needs to have the patience to be able to go, I entrust my coach to get me where I need to go. Because, you know, when it comes to the fight game, it's not just a fighter in a sense. I say that. The fighter's in doing the physical side of things, but the coach is also in doing the physical and the mental side to control that. You know, so we're a team when it comes to that. And yes, of course, the fighter, mentally has to get themselves in that ring and physically get the job done. But also mentally, the coach is there to really steer them the right way, to steer them to get them to where they need to be. And that can be tiring for both of us.
Yeah.
But if you can't have that entrustment together, then it just doesn't. You got to find that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely two things. You know, you either have it, or you don't. But you can still. Me as a coach, I believe that you can definitely change someone to be that person. You just got to find that inner person. Like, you got to find what they are, and you got to nurture it. You got to really trust that they're going to do it. You know? Yeah.
When a kid walks in to Mittagong Boxing Club,
yeah,
and you look at him or her, what are the traits that you are looking for? What would make you look at a young boy or a young girl and say, oh yeah, there's definitely something here that I can work with?
When they come to me, when they say, "G'day, mate," or "G'day, coach," or whoever it is, they'll come up to me and they say, "Hey, how's it going?" Oh, like whenever I've had a couple of kids come up to me, and I know straight away these guys are the ones that they're coachable. The trait, like I think the big one is just when you get someone to come into the gym, one of the kids that, or any kid that comes in, they need to tell me that they want to do it.
Yeah.
Not their parents.
Yeah.
They need to. I get a lot of the time that a lot of the parents will come into me and say, oh, my son or my daughter, beautiful. They're really good at what they're doing. They're driven. They're really sporty, very athletic, very gifted, all these little things. I don't doubt that. I have mad respect for that. Mad respect for the parents to get them where they are. But at the end of the day, the kid needs to do it. They want to do it. You know, that's what makes them who they are, you know, and yeah.
It's a desire.
It's desire. It's for any kid that does any aspiration of or dream that they want, they have to do it. They want to have to do it. You know, that's the problem with these days in our society. There's a lot of people that I know, not names, I just know generally, that there are parents that come in and they force their parents to go, and not just in the club, but in other sports places, to tell them, no, they're good at this, let them do it, you know. And at the end of the day, ask them 6 months later, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Or they're just too quiet. They're quiet about it. And who's the person who's has to put a lot of work into it to make them go, do you want to do it? Is the coach. But you can only imagine being a coach and having the responsibility of 20 other kids and having to make sure you can really be like driven. You got to do this. I'll become one of the parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want them to know that if you want to come here and you like the vibe and you like the bright lights and the the bags and everything like that, great, come in. I mean, I get some kids now that are coming 20, 15 minutes before class and they've got their hands wrapped, ready to go, and they're shadowboxing. That's keen. But then there's some kids that are there just running around, doing what they're doing. Soon they'll find that they're like, do they want to do it or do they do not want to do it? Or is it just the parents that want to do it?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, the answer to my question is basically it's about the desire. And if they want to do it, they want to do it. Yeah. And it's about once they've done that, it's better for me to be able to coach them because that means that I can steer them in the way that they want, where they want to go. Eventually, like when they're teenagers, they'll start making their own choices. They'll know if they want to keep going for it or they don't. But yeah, desire, 100%.
You've been a fighter and a coach.
Yeah.
What is harder, managing your own fear before a fight or managing your fighter's fear before a fight?
I feel like I'm a father of a whole lot of kids. Don't ever say that to my fighters. But I think the analogy, it's like you have a responsibility, you have a care for your fighters. So I always have a fear whenever they go in. I've got quite a few of them now that are going to fight this week. I have a fear for them. But it's a good fear. You know what I mean? Like just like a fighter should have. If anyone knows, and if anyone that is a fighter, that would know exactly what it means. When you're in the fight week, you have somewhat of a fear in your head. You're role playing what you could do in the first round. You could be role playing what the outcome of the fight is. You could be role playing the worst of the worst that could happen in the fight. And you could also be role playing that feeling of like, am I going to perform well in front of everyone? And that's a big fear. But as a fighter, that's not a bad thing. Fear's good. That's what makes you switched on. Overconfident, not so much. I personally think when you're overconfident in there, you've already won in your head. You've already won in knowing that you can beat this person. And that can be dangerous at times. And that's probably more collateral than you are if you were to be the person that's a bit fear. Because you've got to be prepared for that loss. And you also got to be prepared to the fact that this person could be more hungry than me in the fight.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
Yeah.
So in terms of me being, in terms of those two, I think both of us, I have the fear first, 100%, but I don't show that. Don't show that to my fighters because I can't. It's a persona to have, so I can't show that to my fighters. They already know that I'm feared because I told them that a week before, but they're prepared for that. And then they know, right, my coach has got my back. I've got this. It's now up to them. They have to have the preparation in their mind to go, yep, I'm going to walk through those ropes. It's done. The job's done. Now I'm going to go do what I got to do. Yeah. And I get a proud moment when I sit there because it's like, here we go again. Like, this is awesome. I'm seeing all of their hard work done. I've seen them endure a lot of things, but they're here. That's the biggest accomplishment. Not them worrying about the outcome of it. The accomplishment is to get through the ropes.
Big time.
And they've done that.
Big time.
No one else knows that. No one else knows that. Only people that have been in the ring or people that have endured that training would know.
Big time.
Yeah, because there's so many people from the outside that can see that, and they can see only two fighters going at each other that don't know what their background is. but I have a self-satisfaction and like proudness to my fighters, and I go, well, I'm really proud of you, bro, or her. I'm so glad that you guys have gone where you are and you got into that ring. I mean, I'll quickly, like one of my fighters that I had, I won't make any names, but she went into her first ever fight, and it was an exhibition. You don't win or you lose. It's just an exhibition. She went in there, but I had a fighter before that. So we had like fighters back to back going into the ring. I didn't know. I knew she was nervous, but I didn't know that she was so nervous. I walked back and said, hey, to my assistant coach, I said, Coach, I'm just going to run up to him and I'm going to walk out with her. Go out to the back. She's pacing back and forwards through the room. And I go, are you okay? And I just knew straight away. She was just like, I don't know if I can do it. Like, I just grabbed her really firmly around the shoulders and just went with both hands. I said, stop. Think about her breathing. Took like full breaths, like big breaths. Said, you can do this, just remember that the everything we've been doing doesn't change. Yeah. All of the sparring doesn't change. Yeah. All this pressure and all that stuff doesn't change. The only thing changes is the environment. Everything you do is the exact same thing. It's just a different environment. You can do this. And she's like, okay, I'm good. Walked out, she did what she did, and she did really well. And then she got out of the ring and I said, what was it like? She goes, it's like, I basically told her, it's like jumping out of a plane. Your first prep is like, you're like, I'm shit scared to jump out of that plane. But as soon as you get out of the plane, you're like, I want to get back up and jump out again. Yeah. That's what she was like. Yeah. And that's what it was all, that's it. Fear's a hectic thing, but like, that's what, no one knows that until you go in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a teacher that I'm really into, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he's got a great line. He says, pain is the gift that no one wants.
Absolutely.
And that really lands with me. It is, once you realize it is a gift, you kind of go, that kind of changes your whole perspective on it. And there's a lot of, as in life, there's a lot of discomfort in boxing.
Absolutely.
Do you think discomfort is necessary in boxing and in life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to be uncomfortable to get comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, too many people are like want to stay in that sort of line of like being comfortable. I always say to a lot of my fighters and whatever it is, and clients, I'll say to them, look, guys, you got to really push that boundary. I'm sure that every other coach and every other person says the same thing, but it's just different words, right? But I basically say, like if you want to gain, and if you want to improve, and if you want to know what the unknown is, push the limit. Push it, and then you got nothing to lose from there. Yeah, get over there. Like if you want to do a 3-minute round, do a 6-minute round. If you want to do a bout and you want to do 3 2-minute rounds, do 6 2-minute rounds to train and push it. But don't go backwards, go forwards. And I agree. Like, I mean, just like in life too, like I've had a pretty comfortable life. But I've also, pushed lots of limits myself. But, driving over here, like I was reflecting on my life too, like reflecting on things that, did I have a bad life? To be honest, I had a pretty good life, but there was a lot of lessons that I had that I could have steered down to the wrong path. And I think for me is like that I'm so glad that, I was, there's that line there. I could have kept going just over that uncomfortable line, but I was still just sort of lingering at that line, and then came back again, because I had some great mentors, I had some great people, and I had some great moments in life that really gave me those chances to be able to go, don't do it, So I'm very appreciative, and I'm very I respect the people that have done that for me, and I respect who I am. And I think there's two words that I have in the club that I stick by, is resilience and respect. I think that's a massive thing that I have, and that's what I use with everyone, basically. But yeah, I had a comfortable life, but I really stick by that if you really want to push those limits, I mean, to get over, you've got to push those limits. You really push them.
Yeah. We're kind of coming up towards the end of the episode, but I've got a couple more questions for you. It just kind of occurred to me then, like, community, family, connection, being of service seems to be a theme for you. Right?
Yes.
And in fact, yesterday when we were talking, you said, the club is like your family.
Yes.
Do you think that your background and your upbringing and the fact that you were adopted, do you think you ever stop and think, is that why that I've sought connection through the means of boxing?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, to be honest, I agree 100%. Like, with my whole life that it is, having a second chance and everything like that, a lot of people that know me see me as the happy guy, see me as that real, like, he's the one, he's a very giving guy. He's what you see is what you get with him. The reason for it is because all the things that I endured when I was younger, and having that sense of a second chance, I think that's a big belonging for me, to make me have that chance to be that reflection of, I need to be I feel like I have that feeling of having to give. I have to be that person to be happy. I have to be that person to give back to the community and say, this is what you got to do, and boxing is also another thing, like, I feel if I didn't have boxing, it's like a religion, like, if I didn't have boxing, I could have gone somewhere else. Yeah, I could have done a religion. Yeah, I could have done this. Like, my dad's Hungarian Australian. He's Jewish. My mom's Italian Brazilian. Was Catholic turned Buddhism. Very multicultural family.
Yeah.
But I'm, I want to help. And if I didn't have those life lessons and those life chances, I wouldn't do what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And that's a big reflection on what I'm doing, on why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm so happy to do it, because it's changed me. I don't want people to think that boxing is a religion for them, but I want them to know that, and I don't want them to think that fighting's good, but I definitely feel like you need to have something that you want for yourself, and you gotta live it. You gotta also make your own analogy about how you live your life.
Yeah.
And that's how I live my life. I live my life with that, with rolling through punches in life and rolling through certain things. And boxing is such a grounded thing for me. I don't care what anyone else says, but that's what I feel. And if they want to ride on that with me, 100%, I'd love to share that with them. And if I had to leave that with someone, I think that's helped me. And I have big respect for people that, follow that too, and have their own way of doing things the way that I do.
Yeah. I'm kind of playing with, I call this, it's kind of my closer question. I call it lessons from over the hill.
Yes.
But I'm kind of playing with that. I don't know whether it'll stay that way. But the idea really here is that, if you were to think about the people that would be maybe listening to this podcast or watching it, you got people that don't have boxing backgrounds.
Sure.
That haven't walked in your shoes and lived your life. Maybe some people that are into boxing or they want to be boxers. In ancient times, typically the men in the tribe or a man would travel to distant lands,
Yes.
a place that the rest of the tribe wouldn't go to,
Yep.
And I think in many respects you've been to places that, the rest of the tribe hasn't been to, right? And they would see stuff. And if they were lucky enough to come back, because, back in those times, life was pretty tenuous and dangerous and you could easily not come back, because something might jump out of a tree or bite you and, where's Berto? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I've always wanted to make to have the podcast be a vehicle for lessons, for
Absolutely.
for teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I guess the question that I'd love to ask you, Berto, was based on your time on Earth, the background that you've had, but particularly your background in boxing, and what are the the 2 or 3 little tidbits that you carry with you, and if you were going to give your own kids advice about life, and bearing in mind that you've still got lots of life to live, and there'll be more lessons and more challenges. Too,
Absolutely.
What would those lessons be now that you tell your kids so far?
Yeah, it's so, like, for me personally, if I was to give any advice to my kids or any advice to anyone that is young and is coming up, as I said, like, life is like boxing. Yeah, life is a challenge. Live it naturally. Make those mistakes. Yeah, but also entrust to the fact that, like, you make those mistakes. You also understand that, like, if your family's there to support you, you got to understand that that's a very important thing to have. For me, if I could turn back time, I would have loved to listen to what my parents were, but I couldn't. But if I had the advice to give to some people, some teenagers and people that are out there, even my kids, listen to what your parents or whoever cares for you, listen to them. But at the same time, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel, to be able to test your limits and do all those things, because you only become better and better, and you make those lessons. You make the lesson, and you'll learn from that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Mate, what's happening with the club? What are the plans? What do you got going on? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, there's lots going on. I've got a heap of things happening next year, but it's all kind of like pending at the moment. But I know that there's a lot of my younger guys, they're all wanting to continue their journey of boxing, and there's lots of more challenges out there for them. So lots of more amateur exhibitions. I've got a couple of pros that are keen to get into getting into some more fights for themselves for next year. One of them wants to go for a title shot. And then I've got lots of classes I want to put on. There's a variation of lots of different variations of classes that I want to put on too, to really expand a bit more, as opposed to just being just one sort of certain target that I'm looking for. I'm looking for everyone. I want everyone to feel that boxing is for everyone. Yeah. But yeah, big year. I want to host a fight night down locally.
Okay.
See how that goes with the community.
Yeah.
But I think it will be good. But other than that, we've got a big thing strapped for next year, but it's just navigating to that. And we've had a big year this year, and we've had a big 3 years, and next year will be our 4th year. So, yeah, I'm tired. I'm definitely tired. But I'm really looking to have a bit of a break, and we get right back into it again.
Exciting.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you this, without naming names, is there any amateurs in the stable that you kind of think, there's something here?
There's a couple of them.
Yeah.
In general, or
in general? Yeah.
Yeah. There is a couple, but our amateur game in Australia is kind of like it's only getting bigger. I think personally, our women are getting better.
Really?
You watch out for the women. I think the women's boxing I think it's fantastic how our women's boxing has gone from not as recognized to amazingly recognized worldwide. And I think it's a fantastic thing. It's a big, it's massive. So watch out for that, I think. And a lot of the amateurs at the moment, within the next 2 years, are going to be turning pro, and you watch these names that come through. So yeah, I think it's a very exciting time for Australian boxing. It's also very exciting just in general for worldwide boxing, because there's quite a lot of talent that's coming through, which hopefully that will bring a next wave of fighters that come through too. So yeah, 100%.
Mate, how do people get in contact with you?
Via socials.
Yep.
So either Instagram or Facebook, and they can go through just to Mittagong Boxing Club.
Yeah.
We don't actually have a website. We do have a landing page, which is just called mittagongboxingclub.com.au. And you can get in contact with me personally, but you would have to go through Facebook, and my number's on that too.
Yeah, okay. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you for doing this.
I appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. You know what? I walked into your club, and the first thing I noticed about you was your energy.
Thanks, man.
You know?
Yeah.
And you've got this infectious way about you that is really authentic and really welcoming. And there's a lot of love in you. You know, I really get that sense of, this big heart that wants to help people. And that was the first thing that struck me. And I think, the fact that there are lots of things that I respect about you. I think it takes a fighter's courage to come on a podcast and talk about stuff that's kind of close to the bone. You know? So it was the same courage.
Appreciate you, man. Yeah, no.
To get in the ring, to come here today and talk about some of this stuff. So I really want to kind of honor that and acknowledge that. And also just kind of make the comment that, just going back to my earlier point, I think we, in life, we are obsessed with winning and losing. It's very binary. It's very, he did well, she didn't do well, and I think if I think about a guy like you, yes, you're a coach, but what you're really doing is, in my opinion, is you are forging character in young people.
Appreciate you, man.
You are a forger of souls, and I just want to acknowledge that, and I really respect that. So thanks for everything you do, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Always, man.